Welcome to One Tech World. For this session, I'm talking about it's not what you do, but how you do it with Naomi Masterson, who is a senior leader in tech at Northern Trust. We will be discussing her insights on building a successful and fulfilling career in tech and the challenges and triumphs of navigating career progression, maintaining curiosity, and staying confident as you climb the corporate ladder. From mastering self-belief on the tough days to understanding and articulating your worth and staying true to your value, this conversation is going to explore some incredible key strategies for women who want to thrive in the workplace. So welcome, Naomi. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat to you, as always.
Thank you. So first of all, tell me a little bit about your career journey and what first drew you into the tech sector.
Yeah, well, I've been with Northern Trust for 25 years, having previously worked with Merrill Lynch straight after college. In university, I did a business degree followed by a master's in MIS, but I always loved technology. I used to go to coding classes from about the age of 7, which is kind of unheard of for a girl in the 80s. But I started at Northern Trust on my journey in app dev and support, which I just loved because you get to meet so many people. And after a few years of being an engineer, realized there were folks who were kind of much better than I was at doing this, but I love the design and the analysis side of things. So I moved in that direction. So I suppose most of my career has been aligned to application delivery, but my real value was being the kind of conduit between the business and technology folks, translating business needs into technical requirements, to drive meaningful outcomes. Currently, I lead the enterprise architecture consulting team, which I love. It gives me a real bird's eye view across the tech organization, and we're also responsible for driving lots of key strategic initiatives like cloud and AI. So it's very exciting, and every day is a school day and lots of opportunity to learn.
So absolutely in tech from the age of 7, people say, oh, do you know what you wanted to do when you were younger? And the answer is invariably no, but obviously for you, it was very much a yes. And I love the point you make about being that intersection between the business and tech. I think people massively underrate that role, of how you are the conduit to kind of make things happen. So yeah, definitely one that's needed. So talk to me about, as you've climbed the career ladder, how have you navigated some of the challenges and changes that have happened along the way? What's your strategies?
Yeah, I suppose there have been many opportunities, and challenges along the way. But looking back, I think, for me, the constant one throughout is juggling and being clear about what my priorities are, particularly when I had my family. I guess no matter what anyone says, you can't have it all. You have to make compromises, but that's okay, right? And I kind of looking back, I was thinking about this when we were chatting, my career thus far has been in 3 stages. The early days of navigating the complexities of the industry, just wing it, basically, constantly adopting and adapting to what's going on. And just about what's next, onwards and upwards, just me to care about, and then you kind of look at sort of more the next stage, what I kind of refer to as sort of maintenance mode, during which my 4 kids arrived, and they're my priority. But I also wanted to keep my hand in, absolutely. So balancing family, and work, and this was really challenging. I guess my eldest child is autistic, so there was loads of appointments, extra attention needed in the early days. But I was fortunate to have, that good balance and realize that it was the right thing to do to sort of step back. I did a 4-day week. They got 5 days out of me without a shadow of a doubt. But really looking back, getting that balance tilted in favor of my family was the right thing for me to do. The window's short. Don't miss it when the kids are small. But now I sort of say it's my time, right? My kids are sort of reared, out of the teenies. And it also coincided around that time we were coming out with COVID, the dreaded COVID, which was awful, but was also a leveler as a global organization, for somebody sitting in Ireland with, it's a US base quite a lot, because we were all on the same boat. And it also coincided with the amazing Alison Payne joining, who really opened my eyes and gave me the push, I suppose, that I probably wouldn't have got otherwise. And she's really challenged me and still does, and has given me lots of opportunity to really push myself, step out of my comfort zone, and really kind of, I suppose, find my confidence, renewed sense of confidence. I have a lot more life experience. I don't look back with regrets about slowing things down, but I can kind of really feel feel my value, right? And I'm kind of ready to go, whatever is next, right?
Do you know something? It's really interesting you mentioned that, because obviously in your particular case, it's Alison Payne, who's one of the senior leaders. I think she's SVP over at Northern Trust, but she's a real example of a woman supporting other women and playing an integral part of their career. And as you say, sometimes that is just giving you the confidence, giving you the stretch, and making sure that your name's in rooms that you're not in. So that example of sponsorship is really important. Just how did you pay that forward?
Well, it's interesting, yeah, because, again, to that point, I have so much gratitude to Alison, but, I suppose what she saw something in me that I didn't maybe see in myself, and I think that's the kind of whole sponsorship, angle. And again, I know a lot of women maybe feel this, with kids and different things and different priorities. We sometimes lose some of our confidence, and that certainly was my experience. But she really kind of presented me with opportunities, talking on this your conference 4 years ago. I'd say I didn't sleep for a month before, out of my comfort zone, but pushing me forward. I'm thrilled, and I don't think I've stopped speaking since. But really, what's important to me, whilst she's opened doors, for me, it's absolutely key that I pay it forward. So for everything she has done for me, I am constantly nudging anyone who comes, or anyone who looks left or right, or who actually is just, I can see something amazing. I see the spark in their eyes, but for whatever reason, they haven't been given the opportunity. That's absolutely kind of something I'm passionate about, and I will go above and beyond, to really try and open doors for people, or just support in any way, because it's critical. You got to bring people forward.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting that you say, like, sometimes people spot things in you that you don't yet see in yourself. And it's like how you kind of, I suppose, buy into that belief system of what someone else says, and find your own confidence from within that. Just, you mentioned earlier on about, these 3 different stages of your career. We often talk about, can women like have it all? Obviously there's, and I don't think this is necessarily, we've got the demands of the job, and then we've got the complexities of home life as well. If you can think of an example where things got really, really difficult, how do you muster the strength to say, right, everything, without killing yourself, kind of thing, that everything needs to be serviced at that particular time? Obviously, you've got to look after the kids, you've got to keep showing up at work. How do you deal with that?
So there's been a number of times throughout my career, at different stages with the kids, and particularly when my kids were smaller, and there was a particularly challenging phase. And it was difficult. I believe some people say you can't have it all. No, I don't think you can have it all, but not all at the same time, I guess, is my, or else you're going to burn yourself out. So really asking for help, knowing when actually, you know what, I need to take a step back. So there was a period, so when I went down to a 4-day week, and there was also a period where I asked I needed to take some time off, parental leave, because my family, I had to, and again, you have to focus. Really, we're not saving lives. What's most important is your family and your loved ones, no matter what. And work will always be here, and opportunities will come, without a doubt. So you have to do right there in time exactly what's most important. And for me, it was always my family. And having now, hindsight, it's easy to say, but work will always be here, right? As long as, and I would say, how do you get through it? Have a sponsor, have somebody who has your back. But you are amazing. So remember that, know your value, and don't kill yourself. You need to take a step back. Something has to give, right? So be brave. Take that decision, because honestly, you will never look back and have any regrets. At that point in time where you are, do what's best for you and for your family, I would always say. Your career will always be there.
Assess your priorities, ask for help, don't be afraid to step back, and the kind of key things that, and I relate personally to kind of all of that. So you and I have spoken before, and we talk about remaining curious, and that continuous thirst for learning, especially at the moment where technology is evolving at such a pace. How do you maintain that curiosity? Because sometimes it's really easy to get kind of set in the doldrums of your job, to kind of think, actually, I need to learn new things. I need to constantly keep evolving. So Talk to
Yeah.
me a little bit about that.
Well, honestly, where I am now in this particular group of enterprise architecture, like we have a bird's eye view across the entire tech organization. So there is, so much I need to know, right? So basically, self-preservation, I have no choice, but I'm really curious. And I love to learn. I know that sounds like a bit of a, but really tech is moving at breakneck speed at the moment. So I'm consciously making an investment in my learning. So both technical and also broadening industry knowledge. So really kind of what I have sort of my rule of thumb is I try to learn something every day, right? And this isn't sort of squirreling away and doing masses of courses. Yeah, it could be doing a course, it could be doing, but it might just be listening to a podcast. It might just be reading some articles. I have a few books on the go. Or really, what I do quite often is I just contact someone in our organization who's doing something that I want to understand more about, and just asking for a show and tell. So it's a win-win. I mean, I'm learning, I'm figuring out what's going on. I'm also meeting new people. So I think you just have to be curious, but you have to take control of your learning, if that makes sense, rather than, there are mandatory learning hours every year that you have to take. And it kind of upsets me. I mean, I get it, folks are really busy, but it's sort of, oh, it's a chore, this mandatory learning, we have to do it. And for me, I'm kind of like, what's the big deal? Learning is, could be a podcast on the train on the way into work, whatever. But be curious, reading the book, constantly investing in yourself, I think, because otherwise you just get left behind. I mean, that's the long and short of it.
So with curiosity, obviously learning new things, that kind of plays into confidence. So if you grow and you stretch in your role and you learn new things, you want to show up, as perhaps priming yourself for a different position or stuff like that. Where do you, in those moments where perhaps you've questioned yourself or lapsed confidence, how do you build that in yourself? Like without that support network around you, what's the conversations you have? Just you and Naomi.
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, when you're kind of thinking about like when you're sort of challenged or how do I, if there's something in front of me and I'm kind of like, I initially, obviously, we all sort of do a little bit of an old, okay, I haven't a bog. And then I kind of go, okay, wait, hang on, this is an opportunity to learn. And I suppose where I know my strengths are, communicating and, bringing all of that to the table. Technically, I know that's an area that I need to really invest in. I need to work harder. And that gives me confidence. So the more that I learn, and I don't for a second need to be deeply technical, but I know I need to know enough to be able to hold a conversation, to feel confident, to be able to understand, what's going on within our organization and across the industry. And really it's on me, So obviously beyond the initial, I don't have a clue what's going on, then it's like, right, what am I going to do about it? And figuring. And this is where I tap on, I ask for help, There are so many bright sparks around our organization and beyond. I just reach out to people, and ask. I'm not afraid to. Nobody knows everything, right? So I really am open to learning. I mean, that's every day. I'm like a sponge, as I say. I'm always thrilled when I learn something new or learn new words, and every single day. So I'm not afraid to ask, and I think that should be more broadly accepted across by all people across the organisation. There is no weakness in asking and not knowing everything, right? But also be generous with your knowledge as well. Be generous with your time. It works both ways.
Absolutely. And I think you're dead right. I think sometimes, there's this perception that you get the senior job title and that's it. You're supposed to know absolutely everything. But we learn by asking questions, right? And we learn by, don't be frightened to tap someone up who's got the knowledge that you kind of crave. And you'll be surprised because people want to kind of help you.
Yes.
Now, another thing, I suppose, with the confidence and the curiosity, when it comes to kind of moments where you are progressing your career or you're going for a promotion or stuff like that, it's really important that you know your worth. And I know this is something that you're really, really passionate about. So in terms of kind of knowing your worth, like what does that look like, or how does that look on the outside?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of been a journey. I now am very comfortable. and that really being my authentic self, all the jazz hands, all the bubbles, is critical for my success. I've learned along the way that I can really be myself and be a good leader, I suppose. I've seen it as one of my strengths. I don't need to act a certain way. I don't need to be the loudest in the room or, throwing my weight around. I really try to listen, right? And listen to hear, not just to reply. So I kind of dispelled all these myths of a leader. It looks like this and says and acts like this. I'm aware of my strengths, and I try to use them to my advantage. I know I'm brilliant at connecting people because it gives me great joy doing so. And by nature, I am a very positive person. I'm very fortunate that that's my sort of disposition. But I also look to see the best in people. And I know people call me enthusiastic or full of energy, and I can be a bit much at times. But I have a great sense of humor, and I really love to have some fun at any opportunity. And I think being comfortable in my skin, that I can just be me, but also be very effective, right? And areas, I suppose, where I don't love conflict, right? So therefore, I need to lean in. I need to really work on that, and I need to, take counsel from peers and stuff. There's difficult conversations to be had, but now, once you have them, you get on with it, and it's again muscle memory, and you build resilience. So really, kind of that's my strength, I suppose, as a leader. I think just being myself.
I mean, on that, like sometimes, for example, I've looked back on my career and there were times where perhaps I was in a room where I didn't feel my worth was acknowledged, or perhaps my ideas were being heard, voices were louder than mine. Have you ever been in that situation, and how would you deal with that?
Well, initially, and kind of has come back to learning, or this feeling of, being in a room and everybody's talking, at times, oh God, they're talking a different language. So that was kind of early days, but okay. So that was a learning gap. So that was something I could, in terms of learning. Now I know exactly what's going on, right? Because I invested in me, and that was something I could fix. But really, what I try to remind myself, and I kind of do need to keep reminding myself, but I'm much more comfortable in it in terms of my self-belief, is, I'm kind of sitting at the leadership table for a reason. I'm not necessarily a charity case, and I'm not a diversity card, right? No matter what people say. But I also know I'm aware of when I do need to ask for help, and I know who my go-to people are, whose opinions I value, and when opportunities, kind of come my way, the old default is like, oh, I'm not qualified because of X, Y, and Z. But now, I try to keep in mind the advice somebody gave me, when an opportunity comes my way, someone may see something in you that, again, back to you don't see in yourself. So just always say yes, worry about it later. Being uncomfortable is where the learning is. So I remind myself, and if I'm in a situation where I'm challenged, like, I'm okay to say, you know what, can I get back to you? Or can you explain? Or I don't understand, and just be completely, honest. And I think people value that. And I think it's better to be candid, and rather than spoofing or being defensive, to be honest. And that's kind of how I work.
It's just a really interesting dynamic, because obviously as you get older and you in more senior leadership positions, you're more experienced in these situations, you can push back a little bit more. But I think for the more younger generations, they may not necessarily have the confidence to speak up in that room, or or challenge in a polite way or whatever. So just interested in that, if you're not senior in your career, you don't have that comfort zone around you, like, how do you position that challenge or deal with those situations?
Yeah, it's interesting. And when I look at some of our amazing early career talent, I mean, I think they're sort of cut out of a different cloth almost, because they're so full of, vigor and the way of the world.
I love that.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And I will always, I guess maybe if I'm meeting, and if there's some, like, I'm always very aware, I'm reading the room, and there's always, invariably, there's one or two people who are the loudest, and they always are the loudest. But I guess where I would come in, I will, advocate for people, and I will, whether use my influence, whatever influence I have, to make sure that all of the voices are heard.
Yeah.
Or facilitate that. Some people don't like to speak up, and that's okay, whether there's chat but making sure that people have an opportunity to feel heard. And I always say that again, back to I was talking about our early career, who were so amazing. I always say, like, speak up, put your ideas, but be okay if your idea isn't picked up, right? Because quite often there's many answers, many right answers. Never lose hope, but keep pushing forward, right? Put your hand up and get into the habit early days, but be know that your idea may not be the one that's chosen, and that's okay too.
Yeah. So don't ever stop pushing forward your ideas. I think it's better to say something, say nothing, right? And if you're not quite sure, go seek counsel elsewhere to back up your idea, or perhaps flesh it out a little bit more, or stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you talked earlier on about being an authentic leader, and obviously a lot of companies instill values, or every so many years they come out with a different set of values that you would like to fit within the culture and the leadership style of the organisation. So I know Northern Trust has just introduced some new cultural behaviours, like being relentlessly client-centric, intentionally inclusive, constantly managing risk, respectfully candid, and always accountable.
Yeah.
What do they mean for you?
So it's I guess even just starting, the idea was like these new cultural behaviour. I thought, oh, great, because for me, kind of culture is, sort of in your DNA. It's how you treat people, right? It's not so much about what you do. We all have a job to do. You get it done, tick, tick, brilliant. But what I love about these new cultures, right? It makes folks mindful, but also we're also being, measured on how we go about our things. So you could ace everything, all of your goals, but if you just did it in a horrible way, shall we say, how you treat people, and you are gonna be kind of rated on that. Now, it's not all about rating, and that's critical, but I think it's important, because sometimes the mindset is, I've met my goals, doesn't matter how many people I've taken down, I've succeeded, so therefore I'm a success. So by taking into account not just the what, the how we go about things, I think is critical, and it's also really helped, I think, with kind of folks leaning in on different behaviours. So okay, so back to your question, how are we implementing that? Obviously, intentionally inclusive is something, to me that's black and white, but realizing that putting a name on it is really important, because people don't realize, they have their go-to people. They have unconscious bias. They're not, including people. They're not, encouraging diversity of thought. But by actually calling it, this is a behaviour that matters to Northern Trust, by including everybody. In terms of relentlessly client-centric, of course, you always think external, but no, all of our clients, every person who you work with is a potential client, right? It's how we actually focus and give a good service, how we are, accountable. Again, another of our behaviours. Are you accountable? There is this mindset of, that's not in my job description, not across the board, but, it can be in a number of areas. We're trying to bring this idea of one NT. So we're all together to deliver, right? As opposed to this sort of pointing fingers. We're all accountable, coming together. And I think that's going to be really important, as we start to move forward. And we really need to think about removing silos and coming as kind of one Northern Trust organisation. We're all marching towards the same goal. And I think the more we can sort of lean into that, the better. One area, and so one that, in terms of everything would fall naturally, but is the respectfully candid, which I love that, because again, I don't like conflict, and it's all of this, I'm not one to, but actually you're doing people no favour if you aren't actually giving them, respectful, being the operative word, feedback, right? Proactive feedback, for good or for bad, but you just want to be able to deliver that in a respectful way, and I think that's a really key one as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. We grow by feedback, right? But you're quite right. It is absolutely how that feedback is delivered. And I think every company is chasing, the perfect kind of culture. Very difficult at the moment, shifting plates all over the world and stuff like that. But, absolutely. So it's been wonderful to talk to you, Naomi. There's always so many nuggets of wisdom in there. And as you say, it's not what you do, right? It's how you do it.
It's how you treat people. Exactly. Thank
Absolutely.
you so much.
Thank you for joining me.
Thanks a million.
Okay, take care. Thank you.
Bye.